Okay, and welcome to another edition of Bang for Your Business with me, James Bonet, and Lucas Hanley. Hi, Lucas.
Hello.
This morning, I'm really pleased to say we've got a great guest. Her name is Rania Robinson, and she's the CEO of creative advertising agency Quiet Storm. Can we start this morning by just getting a little bit of history about the agency Quiet Storm and just who its typical client is?
Yeah, so the agency was founded 25 years ago by my husband and business partner, Trevor Robinson. It was founded based on a lot of, I guess, why a lot of businesses are founded, which is a kind of frustration with the status quo. And that was definitely the case with Trevor and Quiet Storm. He had historically worked in one of the best advertising agencies of that era. So they were kind of agency of the decade, were known for doing some of the most outstanding and sort of famous advertising of that era, which he also did some brilliant, work that's still kind of heralded today as some of our best advertising. So things like the Tango, Orange Man, Slap. And so it was a very kind of iconic agency, and actually very progressive in its time as well in terms of the nature of the work it did and the style of advertising. It was a real kind of sort of game changer at the time, but they were still quite traditional in how they worked. So at that time, particularly, things have moved on a lot over the last 25 years, but at that time you had a big kind of divide between the creatives and the client. So the creatives never had any kind of FaceTime with the clients. They'd be sort of kept under the stairs, as Trev likes to say. And so as a creative, he often didn't meet the client and get to know them until maybe he was shooting the commercial, long after they'd come up with the ideas. And he found that very frustrating because he often found it really inspiring just talking to the clients. And he felt that he would maybe have come to better ideas or, different ideas had he had that exposure early on with the client. So that was kind of one thing. And then the other thing that frustrated him was, at the time, you were either a kind of creative, or you come up with the ideas, or or you're a director, or you're a creative agency or a production company. So the idea of coming up with the idea and then making it was just unheard of. You do one or the other, and he wanted to make his own ideas. Because again, when you've come up with something, you've nurtured it, you've spent 6 months to a year sometimes developing something, and then you hand it over to a director who doesn't necessarily have the same sense of ownership or commitment or invested interest, if you like, in the work, but also in the client relationship and in everything else. He found that, if you're lucky, you'd get the idea accelerated and made brilliant. And, if you're unlucky, it would be sort of destroyed. So for him, they were the reasons why he wanted to set up the agency and do his own thing, really, and do things the way he wanted to do it. And at the time, that was a very unusual business model. I think Quiet Storm was one of the first of its kind that did creative and production and had writers and directors within the stable. So it was, like often with new business ideas, they come from a gap in the market or something that's a weakness that people see that they can change. So that was very much at the heart of the business and the sort of ethos of the business, of doing things differently, if you like, and not following convention and the status quo. So in the early days, we were being hired predominantly to make work, and actually we worked with a lot of the biggest agencies in the industry, the likes of Saatchi's and TBWA and all those guys, to make commercials for them. But as time went on, we picked up our own clients and worked more directly with brands. And then in time, that felt like a conflict of interest to the agency. So the transition went from working with agencies to working with brands. And then I've been with the business for the last 9 years. And what I've brought to the business, I guess, classically, the business was very sort of traditional TV advertising, film-based. And my background was kind of all the other stuff. So classic sort of below the line is it's sort of old terminology, but things like PR and experiential and shopper marketing and all the other stuff, basically all the other consumer touch points. And actually the market was moving much, much more towards this kind of integrated approach, because actually the way consumers interact now with brands and communication, and it's not as linear as it once was. It's completely different now. So it kind of made sense for me to bring that experience and knowledge into the agency. And we always said we'd never work together, but it kind of just made sense, and it happens. So
it sounds like a lot of things that used to be compartmentalized have all been linked up as they should be. So, for instance, I mean, you talked about the creatives Trev being inspired by the client. I'm sure that works the other way in terms of advertising agency production, but also covering so many other things, as opposed to saying, look, you do the advertising, we'll do the below the line elsewhere. Yeah. I mean, having it all linked up with similar messages and similar communications makes complete sense. Has that been a model, Rania, that I mean, it sounds like Quiet Storm's been a trailblazer. Is that a model that's been repeated by other businesses?
Yeah, I think integrated. I think most advertising agencies have an integrated offer now. Yeah. In all honesty, I think what we try to do is focus on what we're really, really good at. We think holistically from a strategic point of view and from a creative idea perspective, and we develop ideas that are media neutral, if you like, that can live anywhere. But what we don't try to do is deliver every channel. So, because I think there is a danger that you become a bit of a jack of all trade and a master of none. But what you have to do is you can't develop. Advertising has always been the kind of lead agency, if you like. It's been where the majority of the investment is. Not so much these days. You know, there's lots of brands that are sort of digital first now, and they're investing much more in digital than they are in classic above the line. But it's the heart, the history, the kind of skill set and experience, and within an advertising agency has always been that big brand, you know, lead thinking and lead, if you like. So, but it's just been required to adapt that knowledge to understand all the other channels and not develop an idea that works as a great TV execution, but just doesn't translate into other channels. So I think it's a natural role for us to take the lead in terms of developing the strategy and the big idea. But, you know, PR is very special, you know, media relations is very special. It can be very specialist. Digital transformation, you know, specific like experiential production, if you like. So what we're not trying to be is everything to everyone. What we're trying to do is lead the thinking with an understanding and appreciation for the other channels, but not necessarily position ourselves as brilliant at executionally at everything. Because I think you do. I don't think people are, in all honesty. I just, with the odd exception maybe, but generally not.
So in your time at Quiet Storm, out of interest, what did that progression of adopting of social and digital look like for your, you know, the campaigns and the creative?
Well, it's happened really organically because, again, you're just trying to join up the communication. You're trying to tell the same story, but in different ways. Or I guess it's not necessarily the same story, but you know, as a brand, you need to be consistent. You need a consistent tone of voice. You need a consistent sense of what you stand for, you know, what your values are, you know, what your point of view is on the world. And you can't have a TV advertising campaign that's saying something in a certain way, and then that doesn't follow through to your other communication. Yes, it has to be adapted to the channel because people engage with different mediums in different ways for different reasons, but you want that consistent voice. So it just made sense to just take that thinking into channel and digital and social. So we didn't actively go out there to try and pick up those types of briefs. It just became part of our response to a brief, and it became, you know, something that we just took through into other channels.
Did that, out of interest, did that approach have to change with these clients? If, say, you know, a campaign was running on social, for instance, you know, one thing social has done is, you know, shortened our attention spans. So has that kind of affected the way that you approach these projects?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to think about the medium and how people behave and engage with that particular medium, and you have to adapt accordingly. But what you do want is some sort of overarching, consistent kind of glue, if you like, a thread, something that pulls everything together so it doesn't feel disconnected and kind of, you know, and you're building on the work you've done through other channels as well. So yeah, and what you need is that ability to be tactical and very specific to the channel, but within the context of a strategy, if you like, a bigger strategy. And that's what we bring, I think, as an advertising agency, is that kind of thing that binds everything together, that that, wherever it appears. And with most of our clients, we do obviously, digital and social as part of the communicational mix that we deliver. But then we do have some clients that have got very digital first strategy, where we might work alongside a digital. I mean, that's becoming less and less common now, because I don't think it makes sense really to have a separate, necessarily a separate digital and social agency. But I think it really depends on the nature of the client. If you're a client that is predominantly digital, versus integrated, or multiple touch points, it might make more sense to be with a social digital specialist agency. But I think that's becoming less and less the case.
Have there been any game-changing moments for you or the business?
Oh God, there've been probably quite a few, I would say, over the years. I mean, we've had a few things happen in the 25 years that it's our 25th birthday this year in September.
Congratulations.
So a lot's happened in 25 years. I mean, the landscape is completely entirely different. It's just beyond different. As a business, we've gone through a number of transitions. So being, I guess, like I said, production-led initially in the early stages, to becoming more strategically, creatively led, and kind of from agencies to brands. We also, have had a couple of, we went into a strategic partnership with an agency, another independent agency, at the sort of 2012. It was sort of at the end of the economic sort of crisis, really. It was just as we were coming out of the economic crisis, we went into a partnership with another agency. We felt that was the right thing to do at the time. There was a lot of kind of agency consolidation. Lots of businesses didn't survive it. And it was challenging times. And I think at the time it made sense for us to be part of something bigger, and what that potentially could bring. I mean, we found that actually, in hindsight, it didn't really kind of transpire the way we imagined it would. But our hand was forced anyway, because they then got bought by a big global network, and we didn't want to be part of that. So we went through a management buyout, and now we're fully independent, back to being fully independent. So we've had quite a few things, milestones in the agency. At a point where we've brought in post-production and editing facilities, and that took the business to another level. The whole kind of integration and 360, that took us to another level. So we've gone through a number of iterations over the last 25 years that has been kind of in response to the market, I guess, and staying relevant and necessary. So and you learn from that. Some have been, we've made some mistakes. We've tried some things that haven't worked out, and realigned, and but it's kind of trial and error, really.
And it's important to make mistakes, but recognise them and then move on, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you definitely learn more from mistakes than you do from successes. You get very comfortable with success, and actually you stop pushing yourself when things are going well. And actually, often what you don't realise is things might appear to be going well, but actually they're sort of eroding in the background. And then in a year, it often takes, just like success takes time. You can put a lot of work in without seeing any benefit, and then suddenly you reach that tipping point. Same happens with failure. It's tiny little cuts that you're not really picking up on, because overall, ultimately, it looks like you're kind of doing quite well. And then that can have a massively negative impact. It suddenly hits you. So you can't take these things for granted, and you don't when things are tough. Yeah. You do when things are kind of going well.
And that's it. You like you said, I mean, a word that's thrown around a lot at the moment, James and I kind of said it a few times now in these podcasts, is pivoting, isn't it? Yeah. And especially reacting in times like this, especially. So how are you adapting your strategy, in the situation we find ourselves in, and what measures are you putting in place to overcome the situation?
Yeah. I mean, we've been quite lucky, all things considered. And when you compare, to a lot of people currently dealing with the current situation, and that we have quite a big portfolio of food and drink brands, FMCG, so they're brands that are, multiple grocer brands. Their brands are actually doing exceptionally well at the moment. As you can imagine, people are at home, they're cooking more, their kids are at home, so they're buying, food to cook. We work with one of our clients is a frozen fish brand. We've got a client that's a disinfectant brand.
You can mention them, Rania.
I can mention them. Okay, so Young Seafood, which is one of our clients. So, frozen goods, people are stockpiling, they're putting stuff in their freezer, kids are at home, they're eating more people are looking for quick preparation meals. We've got Zoflora, which is a disinfectant brand, which you can obviously is clearly doing brilliantly at the moment. And we've got Haribo, which again, it's a kind of, a sweet confectionery brand. People are not, so we're quite protected. We also, a lot of our clients have got the kind of foresight to recognize that actually they need to invest in their brands right now. And actually it's very tempting when things are tough to just cut spend, to just go silent. But actually we know there's 100 years of evidence that shows that actually brands that don't invest during recession, the actual long-term impact on that is it takes years and years to regain that. And actually the benefit, because fewer people are spending, the kind of equivalent share of voice when you invest, when everyone else is going quiet, is considerable. So we've been having those conversations with our clients, and they've got the kind of foresight to understand that is important. So they've all been investing, with the majority have been investing. Where there's been challenges has been, clients who've maybe got issues with distribution and things like that. But that's what we're doing, is obviously encouraging them to look at their distribution models and kind of that side of things. So for us, we've been, lucky in that respect. Also, we're very focused on brand, but as a business, we're very focused on brand building, which I think, again, can get overlooked in tough times because people become very short-sighted, very tactical. They stop investing in long-term brand. But again, clients come to us for a reason. So they kind of, broadly buy into the fact that they need to invest in their brands. So you get that kind of, that headset, that shared sort of philosophy of the world. But also not just that, we are, we're getting the opportunity to really, something that we always encourage is, having a kind of strategic partnership role with our clients, rather than just being like coming up with a great campaign idea and producing it. We stand head to head with our clients as partners, and actually through tough times, that's when you need your agencies more. You need them to, in terms of being able to give you that kind of strategic input.
And sharing that responsibility.
And sharing the responsibility, yeah. So I think so far, we've been, relatively unscathed in that respect. I mean, obviously the way we're working has had to adapt, massively. And I think initially, certainly in the first sort of few weeks, it was like, okay, this is okay. Yeah, it's a bit more stressful. It takes a bit more time. You need to be a bit more organized, but actually not as bad as you would imagine it. If someone had said to me, right, you can all be stuck at home, you're going to be doing everything virtually. We've produced a TV commercial in lockdown. We've done everything that we would normally do. It's obviously had its constraints and it's had its challenges, but, we're functioning and we're being productive, and actually we've produced some really good work. Zoom fatigue is setting in a little bit. I do think we're reaching a point now where, it's not, the culture will start to suffer, I think, in time. And it's not about, because we had a very, very strong culture anyway, and we're a tight knit, and it's easier when you're a small business, you kind of sort of family feel. Your cultures is more insulated in a way. When you're trying to manage hundreds of people, I think it's a lot harder than trying to manage a small sort of group. But I think definitely we're going to have to evolve that. If we're going to be working like this for a long period of time, we need to think about how we can evolve the way we're working to bring back the, or not bring back, but to make sure we're driving as much humanity in it as we can. So I think we'll be definitely looking at that. We are also looking at what our focus should be over the next 12 to 18 months for ourselves and for our clients. Bearing in mind that we are facing into, we're in recession now, aren't we? And we'll be facing into probably long, quite stretched out, some economic challenges over the next 12 to 18 months. What that looks like, nobody really knows yet, but we know it's not going to be as it was. So we're planning for that as well. And really what we're thinking about is what can we, rather than I think there's a temptation when things are like this to be everything to everyone and to try and become something you're not, because it's kind of what's happening currently. Whereas I think for us, it's about like dialing up the things that are brilliant about us that are specifically relevant in this time, but it's true to us. It's not like, right, okay, everyone's doing this, so we're going to start doing this. It's actually, this is how we can apply what we're brilliant at to the current situation. And being true to yourself, I think that's really important.
Someone else used the word human in an earlier podcast we did. I think that's very true. Other than the current phase, and obviously this is quite a big issue, with problems and things. What can you think of times when you've had really tough challenges and how you've dealt with those challenges?
I mean, to be honest, I've found a lot. I mean, I've run this business for 8 or 9 years, and it's never not been tough. As far as I'm concerned. I feel like, to be honest, so for me, it's just another set of toughness.
Yeah.
Different circumstances, same toughness. It's been pretty tough for quite a while now, really, hasn't it, for all of us? I think, since the crash, 2008, everything, it's never quite been the same, has it? And certainly, depending on what kind of business you are, I think you're either disrupting or you're being disrupted. Yeah. All our clients are experiencing the same thing. Everything, technology, new players. I don't think there's many industries, with the exception of the big tech companies and a small percentage, that haven't been facing a challenging trading environment for quite some time now. So for me, it's a different set of circumstances, but it's still challenge. You can't rest on your laurels. I mean, I remember pre-crash what it was like. It was like you were turning business down. It was just, you couldn't even cope with the level of opportunity. All brands were growing, all agencies were growing, rapidly growing, and it's not been like that for a really long time, unless you're in a very specific area like data or tech or digital transformation. There's always winners in these situations, but for most other businesses, the majority of businesses, it's been challenging. So just another set of circumstances, really. Bring it on.
It's just constant firefighting, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, just in the last 2 or 3 years, we've had referendums, we've had general elections, we've had Brexit, we've had all sorts. Things have not been straightforward for quite some time, I would say.
So you mentioned obviously about company culture, and arguably that's one of the most important elements of a successful business. How are you keeping everyone there positive, and as well yourself? How are you keeping positive yourself at home during times like this?
We're trying to maintain as much normality as possible in what is obviously a very abnormal situation, but we've tried to make it so we do Monday morning meetings where they're inspiration meetings where everyone, like 2 or 3 people, will share something that's inspired them, which we do obviously face to face. We do that we do that virtually as we always do on the Monday mornings. We do Friday night drinks. We do which we theme and put kind of interactive components to. We're doing things like welfare surveys. We're sort of supporting the guys with kind of virtual exercise classes, things that we're just trying to maintain normality in an abnormal situation, to be honest with you, as much as possible. So we do have a really strong culture, I think, and it's something that we've invested in for years and years and years, and it is easier when you're smaller, to be honest. And there's lots of interpersonal relationships within the agency. People genuinely have genuine sort of personal relationships, so those personal relationships sort of continue offline, if you like, or online these days. Online, not offline, sorry, online. But what we have also tried to encourage, as the lockdown rules have sort of loosened, what we have tried to encourage is that people get together through cluster groups. So, we're not opening the office. We don't see the point indefinitely. But for the moment, we've just got no plans to reopen. Our concern is, if you can't reopen in a way that is conducive to interpersonal relationships and to working collaboratively and to driving culture, why bother? And all the things that you have to do to make it kind of viable, to me, don't support culture and interpersonal relationships. So for me, there's no real reason or benefit to opening the office. But what is really important, we believe, is that people do need to have those interpersonal, face-to-face experiences and opportunities, and particularly if you're a creative team who are used to working together very, very tightly, or a project team, so what we are encouraging, or as a board of directors, we had a planning day the other day, and we did a mix of kind of some people, a small percentage of the board coming to sit in the garden with some virtually, and what we're doing is just encouraging people to take those opportunities and creatives to go to the park and work together on something. So I do think that's helped a bit in the sense of having some personal interaction. that's face to face, and so. But yeah, I think it is difficult, and it's definitely kind of starting to wear a little bit. If I was honest, I think you only have a certain amount of kind of culture credit before you have to put money back in the bank, and I think it relies very heavily on that interpersonal interaction, which you just don't get in this, through virtual communication, not in the same way.
No, there's nothing quite like
No.
a face-to-face transaction, opportunity to speak to someone.
Yeah.
It
And being in a war room together, and being like those late nights with the pizzas and the beers, and you're in it. You're really in the trenches. It feels like you're really in the trenches when you're together in the office. It doesn't feel quite the same. You can function. You can still go. You can follow the same procedures and processes and all that kind of stuff. But it's just not. It's a different experience completely.
What advice would you give other businesses during this time?
I think be really, really conscious of how you're treating your staff and the decisions you're making. I think for us, that's been really, really important. It's been a real guiding light for us. And this happens a lot through tough times, is, businesses, it's easy to behave badly because the circumstances sort of force you to make difficult decisions and to be a bit thoughtless and throw away with the decisions you make. But as soon as things get better, people will up and leave. They'll go. You'll lose brilliant people. People don't forget. They don't forget how you treat them through tough times. And just because they can't maybe do anything about it now doesn't mean further down the line they're not going to do something about it. And what we often see through these periods is that you get very little movement because there's the market's so stagnant. But as soon as things pick up, you get mass exodus out of businesses. So really think twice about the decisions you're making and how you're. We've tried to, and to be fair, we've been luckier than most. Our business hasn't dropped off a cliff overnight. For some businesses, experiential agencies, film production companies, people that have the core of their business relies on things that are now entirely restricted. Of course, it's tough and they've got to make some tough decisions, but the sensitivity around that and empathy when making those decisions, for us, we've not had to make those decisions straight away. Had we made some decisions sooner, would the business be maybe financially better off, today versus possibly? Yes. But for us, you can't just look at it from you've got to look at the human kind of collateral, if you like.
There's that word again. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And so that would be almost the single most important thing. We've been very, very conscious of the impact this is having on our staff, and the long-term impact of short-term decisions that we're all having to make right now. So.
Yeah, and it's such a great time to enrich relationships, not only with your clients but with your staff as well. Yeah. So I guess what kind of impact do you think this will have on the overall market?
God, that's $1 million question, isn't it? It really is. I wish I knew. The kind of crazy thing about this situation is there's nothing clear cut about it, is there? There's just absolutely no sense of certainty with it. What I'm hoping is that we'll rebound, we'll get quickly and we'll rebound pretty quick. Obviously, for some businesses, the impact, even of the last few months, is going to take years in some cases to recover from. But I would like to see that, I'd like to think that we will bounce back pretty well from it. I mean, if you look at other markets who are sort of a bit more ahead, there is indications that could be the case. But obviously, we're all holding our breath a bit, aren't we? Because we don't know how long this is going to go on for. We don't know if there's going to be a second wave. We don't know what, and we haven't got enough kind of empirical evidence, if you like, at the moment, even with the markets that are ahead of us, to know really what this is going to look like. Obviously, we are going to face into some economic challenges. I think that's almost inevitable. I think it's the extent of it and the length of it that we're all still waiting to, and what the kind of landscape will be like afterwards. We are going to lose some brilliant businesses. We're going to lose some fantastic agencies. That's inevitable. That's what happened in 2008. I know it's different, different set of circumstances, but, businesses are going out of business already, let alone, further down the line. So we will lose some brilliant agencies that just, unfortunately, it's a circumstantial thing. It's not even, you can't even say, well, we've not been running the business properly, we've not evolved, we've not, it's just circumstantial. It's just unlucky if you don't have the right client portfolio and you're not in the right sector. It's not even, poor leadership or anything like that. You can't, often we beat ourselves up when things don't go well. But in a situation like this, it's like who could have even imagined? So I don't know. I wish I had all the answers. I really don't know. But it'll play out, I guess.
But as you say, you've been fighting challenges for years and years and years. So you're in a good mode.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I think for me, the way to get through this is it's all about headset at the end of the day. It's always about headset for me, because you can look at a situation and kind of, take the negative, or you can look at it and take the positive. So for me, what I have learned over the last 8 years, I used to struggle a lot more with challenging situations, but what I've learned in 8 years is you do get through them. We're still here. 25 years later, we're still here. 2 recessions, God knows what else has been thrown at us. So with that comes a sense of not confidence, because you just don't know, but an optimism that you go, we'll get through this. So staying optimistic, being positive, looking at the things that you have control over. There's lots of people who don't have control over, but focus on the things that you do have control over, and make sure those things are as good as they can be. So I think that's as much as you can do, really. And
you get, I think what you're saying there, you get used to that feeling of the challenge or being uncomfortable, and therefore, it allows you to operate more clearly as opposed to being unsettled the whole time.
Definitely. And what I've learned is how to sort of, and I know this is an overused word, but it's like that self-care through these periods. That's something I've learned. It's taken me years to learn it, but you do really have to look after yourself, and you'll just cope better, and your head's will be better. And to find that time, it's so easy to go into overdrive and just go, I need every hour, and I've done that in the past, and actually it's really counterproductive.
Sure.
Take time out, look after yourself, take a moment.
So true, isn't it? Mental health is number one at the end of the day. And, things that are out of your control, like you say, there's no point stressing over. We know businesses that some of my clients even have taken a few weeks, even a month out, and just kind of clearing their head, and they've come back stronger from it.
Yeah. I think that's actually a really, really good thing. And, I've historically not been very good at that. I just overcompensate. I think the more I do, the better things will be. And actually I've learned that that's not, sometimes you just got to relinquish and just go, there's nothing, I'm just going to let it go. and then come back stronger. Absolutely. I think
Well, Rania, thank you so much. I think that's everything our end. Really, really appreciate the time, and really, really useful and insightful. Do you have any links or anything that you want to plug here?
Oh my God. Yes, I saw that, and I have loads. I just don't know what any of them are.
We'll put them in the, you just send them over after. We'll put them in we'll put them in the description. So that's it. If this was of any use, please do give it a share, give it a like, and subscribe. Obviously, you can find us on Spotify and YouTube. From Rania, James, and I, that's it. We will see you in the next one.